Hello everyone, today we're talking about whether you should bounce the bar off the floor when you do a deadlift. Now this is something I still see quite a lot of when I go to a busy gym, and it's something that some of my clients have commented on seeing in their gyms, so I thought it was worth covering. I think most people that have done some strength training before would say that no, you do not bounce the bar off the floor in a deadlift. However, you still see enough of it, especially through things like CrossFit or, like I say, mainstream gym training, that there's a bit of an argument as to whether you would or not. And you might be thinking, well, I bounce when I come out of the bottom of a squat, and plenty of people bounce the bar off their chest when they do a bench press, so why not bounce a deadlift as well? So I thought I'd cover exactly why you might not want to do that in this video. I did do this as a poll on Instagram the other day, and overwhelmingly the answer was no. People that follow me on Instagram don't bounce the bar off the floor in their deadlift. If you want to see more polls like that, make sure you follow me on Instagram as well. I'm not sure how many of my Instagram followers are on YouTube and vice versa, but it would be great to have you on both platforms because I do post different content on both. So whether or not you bounce the bar off the floor when you deadlift really comes down to why you deadlift in the first place. So when you bounce the bar off the floor, what you do is create elastic energy that is going to help get the bar moving at the very bottom part of the lift. This means that as time goes on, as you get fatigued or as you add weight, the hardest part of the lift is not going to be close to the floor. It's going to be a little bit higher up, possibly even towards the top as you're kind of pushing your hips through into extension. Now that would be fine if you're looking to use the deadlift just to train hip extension, but I think there are much simpler exercises to use to train hip extension on its own, such as a hip thrust or a Romanian deadlift. When I program a deadlift for someone, I am trying to get them to do an exercise where they're starting from the floor or from a low platform. They may need a box depending on their mobility issues, but starting from a low position in a dead stop, and in that position they're going to get really tight and they're going to produce a lot of force and really commit to lifting that weight from a dead stop. I might program that way because I train a powerlifter who wants to improve their deadlift. I might train that way with someone who's just looking for general health and well-being goals and wants to get more confident at performing daily tasks, such as picking things up from the floor. So using an elastic bounce motion at the bottom of the deadlift to take that away robs those two types of clients from that goal. Like I say, if I'm looking to train hip extension or hamstring range of motion or overall hinging ability, I might do a Romanian deadlift or a hip thrust instead. But if I'm training someone to do the deadlift, I don't want to take away that bottom starting position because that, I feel, is the most important reason for doing those. As someone who for a lot of years focused on Romanian deadlifts instead of deadlifts from the floor, I can tell you that when you take time away from deadlifting from the floor, there's a real psychological element to, committing to starting that lift and building up that force production at the bottom of the movement. So for me, that really underlined how important it was to keep deadlifting from the floor from a dead stop if that aligns with my goals. So from my perspective, if I'm training you and I've programmed a full deadlift from the floor into your program, then the intention there is for you to perform each rep with a dead stop. There's only really two occasions where I might change my mind and program in a more bouncy deadlift. First would be if I'm training someone for a CrossFit or a strongman event where there's an exercise such as deadlifting as many reps as you can in a minute. So sometimes you see this, it might be like a 100 kilo bar, 150 kilo bar, and you've got to do as many reps of deadlift in a minute. And there may be no specification within the rules about whether you can bounce the bar or not. So if that rule is taken out, if no one is stipulating that you cannot bounce the bar, then you might as well bounce the bar because, as we said already, it's going to save you a bit of energy at the bottom of the lift, it's going to save you some resetting time, and it's probably going to make the deadlift a little bit easier. So if you're doing a competition where you have to do as many reps as you can of the deadlift in a minute or something, that might be one occasion where I would say you should bounce the deadlift. Because if you go to that event and you're performing every deadlift with a perfect dead stop every time, then chances are all your competitors are going to really blow you away because they're just going to be bouncing the bar up and down and doing their reps that way. So that is a strategic decision. That is not the best training outcome, but that is a strategic decision that might be useful as a form of practice in the months building up to a competition where you know what events you're going to get. The other time I might do it is if I'm helping someone to deadlift just recreationally and they're having a real struggle setting themselves up in the bottom position and they really hate kind of setting up at the bottom and they'd rather do what we call a top-down approach where you stand up with a bar, you get yourself tight and then you go down into the movement from there. I've never really had to do that though. I think most people are able to learn the deadlift from the floor. And I think once again, if I give up too soon and just give them a bouncy deadlift as an alternative, I'm robbing them of the ability to learn that movement skill and solve that problem. So that is pretty much it. If you want to get strong in the deadlift, or if you want to get good at picking things up and performing functions in day-to-day life, if you want to be training for a full range of motion, For all those reasons, don't bounce your deadlifts. Make sure you're starting with a dead stop, and that way you can be really honest about how much force you're producing and how well you're improving over time. If you're training for a competition, then you might want to practice that movement for strategic purposes. You don't want to be the one guy in the competition who's doing everything with perfect form while everyone else is flying through reps and reps and reps. If you are struggling with the deadlift because you're not able to get tight in the bottom position, firstly, I'd recommend hiring a coach and doing a bit more learning there. But if that really doesn't work for you, that might be one other occasion where I try the bouncy deadlift. So if you're someone that bounces your deadlifts all the time, let me know if this has inspired you to change into a more deliberate setup on your deadlift. And if you're someone who already does a very, dead stop deadlift every time, would you ever consider bouncing a deadlift, and why? Let me know what you think in the comments, and please do subscribe if you haven't already. The channel is getting some momentum now, so I'd really like to keep that going. If you can share this page to your friends, maybe share the video if you have any friends who are curious about this question themselves, I would really appreciate that. Don't forget also to check out the blog. Thank you, and I'll see you again next time.